The transport shuttle touched down on Talos 7 with a heavy thud that rattled Day One's bones. He grabbed his rifle case and duffel bag, stepping out onto the rocky surface of the moon. The air was thin but breathable, and the gravity felt lighter than Earth's. Around him, the forward operating base stretched across the gray landscape like a metal fortress. Soldiers from dozens of alien species moved between buildings, their forms strange and powerful. Day One had seen pictures, watched videos, but nothing prepared him for standing among them. The Borvac soldiers were 3 meters tall, with thick gray skin like stone. The Chithrax moved on 6 legs, their exoskeletons gleaming black under the artificial lights. The lumens looked like walking crystals, their bodies transparent and glowing with inner light. And there were others, species he didn't even have names for yet. He felt small. He felt weak. But he kept his back straight and his face calm as he walked toward the command center. Inside, Commander Voss waited for him. The krill was massive, nearly as large as the Borvac, but covered in dark green scales. His yellow eyes studied Day One like a predator examining prey. Behind him stood the other members of Strike Team Vortex, and Day One could see the disappointment on their alien faces. "You are the human," Commander Voss said. His voice was deep and rough, like grinding rocks. "Earth sent 1 soldier. 1. "Yes, sir." Corporal Day One, reporting for duty. A laugh erupted from the back of the room. A Borvac sergeant stepped forward, his arms crossed over his barrel chest. This is what Earth contributes? I've seen supply drones more threatening." "Sergeant Threx, enough," Commander Voss said, but there was no real force behind the words. He turned back to Day One. "What is your specialty, Corporal?" "Long-range marksman, sir." "Sniper qualified." Another laugh, this time from a Chithrax warrior whose translator made clicking sounds before speaking. "Sniper? Human eyes can barely see 100 meters. Our optical sensors scan 10 kilometers in full spectrum." Day One said nothing. He had been warned about this. Earth's military had briefed him extensively. Humans were the newest species in the Galactic Coalition, and nobody respected them yet. The other species had faster ships, stronger soldiers, better weapons. Earth was included in the Coalition more out of pity than respect. Commander Voss pulled up a holographic map of the area. A red marker indicated their target, a sector fortification built into a mountain range 30 kilometers north. "Tomorrow we strike this position. The sector have been using it to launch raids on civilian colonies. Intelligence suggests light defense, maybe 40 enemy soldiers." He pointed to various positions on the map. "Thrax, your Borvac squad takes the front assault. Chithrax units will flank from the east. Lumens provide covering fire and medical support." His claw moved to a position far behind the main force. "Corporal Day One, you will guard our rear position. Watch for enemy scouts attempting to cut off our retreat." Day One studied the map. The fortification sat on high ground with clear sightlines in all directions. The approach was through open terrain with minimal cover. It was a killing field, perfect for defenders. He pointed to a ridge 3 kilometers west of the target. "Sir, permission to speak?" "Granted. I could position here, on this ridge. It overlooks the entire approach and the fortification. I could provide reconnaissance and long-range support during the assault." The room fell silent. Then Sergeant Threx laughed again, louder this time. 3 kilometers? "Human, my weapon systems can barely hit targets at that range, and I have computer-assisted targeting. You expect us to believe you can shoot accurately with primitive ballistics?" "Yes, Sergeant." "With your weak human eyes?" "Yes, Sergeant." The Chithrax warrior chittered in amusement. Even Crystallis, the young Lumen medic who had been silent until now, seemed to pulse with what might have been laughter. Commander Voss shook his head slowly. "Corporal, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but let's be realistic. You will guard the rear. That is an order. Yes, sir. The briefing continued for another hour, covering approach routes, communication protocols, and extraction plans. Day 1 listened carefully, memorizing every detail. When it ended, the other soldiers filed out, still making jokes about the useless human. Only Commander Voss remained for a moment. Day 1, he said quietly, I do not mean to insult your abilities, but this is combat against the sector. They are efficient killers. I would prefer you survive your first mission with us. I understand, sir. I won't let you down. Commander Voss studied him for a long moment, then nodded and left. Day 1 returned to his assigned quarters, a small room barely large enough for a bed and locker. He unpacked his gear methodically. First his rifle, a modified long-range weapon that had served him through 3 years of training. He checked every component, cleaned every surface, tested every mechanism. The other soldiers relied on plasma weapons and energy rifles with computerized targeting. Day 1 relied on gunpowder, metal, and skill. From his helmet, he pulled out a small photograph. His sister G1 smiled back at him, wearing her own military uniform. She was stationed somewhere near the Andromeda sector, serving on a coalition warship. They had joined together, determined to prove that humans belonged in this galactic war. They'll see, he whispered to her picture, just like he had whispered to himself on the shuttle. Tomorrow, they'll see what humans can do. He placed the photo back in his helmet and lay down on the bed. Sleep came slowly. Outside his window, alien soldiers prepared for battle, none of them believing the small human would make any difference at all. By this time tomorrow, Day 1 knew everything would change. The sun rose over Talos 7, painting the rocky landscape in shades of orange and red. Day 1 stood with Strike Team Vortex at the staging area, his rifle strapped across his back. Around him, the alien soldiers checked their weapons and armor. They looked ready, confident, powerful. Commander Voss gave the final orders. Move out. Maintain formation. Communications check every 10 minutes. The team advanced across the terrain in a standard combat spread. The Borvac soldiers led the way, their heavy armor gleaming. Behind them came the Chithrax warriors, moving fast on their multiple legs. The lumens floated between positions, their crystalline bodies refracting the sunlight. And at the very back alone walked Day-1. Nobody spoke to him. Nobody checked if he could keep up. He was just a human, assigned to a useless position because nobody knew what else to do with him. The march took 2 hours. They crossed ridges and valleys, following the route Commander Voss had planned. The sector fortification grew larger in the distance, a dark structure built into the mountainside. Through his rifle scope, Day 1 studied it carefully. He saw gun positions, lookout towers, and defensive walls. Intelligence had said light defense. This looked heavy. Vortex actual, approaching the staging point. Commander Voss reported over the comm system. They entered a wide valley, the mountain looming ahead. This was the final approach before the assault would begin. The team spread out, moving toward cover positions. Sergeant Thrax and his Borvac squad took point, weapons ready. Then the world exploded. Plasma fire erupted from hidden positions in the rocks. Energy bolts slammed into the Borvac armor, sending sparks flying. The Chithrax warriors scattered, their exoskeletons cracking under the sustained fire. Screams filled the comm channel, mixed with the harsh clicking language of the sector. Ambush. All units take cover. Commander Voss roared. The team dove for whatever protection they could find, but the valley offered little. They were caught in a kill zone, and the sector had planned it perfectly. Enemy fire came from the ridges, from caves in the valley walls, from positions that sensors had missed entirely. Day 1 dropped behind a boulder, his heart pounding. From his rear position, He could see the entire battlefield laid out before him. While the aliens scrambled with their malfunctioning sensors, jammed by sector technology, the one used his eyes. He scanned the ridges systematically, looking for muzzle flashes, movement, anything that indicated enemy positions. There, a tower ruin 400 meters northeast. A sector sniper was firing from the collapsed upper floor. Day one could see the slight shimmer of displaced air each time the alien fired. He unslung his rifle and took position against a boulder. His breathing slowed automatically, falling into the rhythm he had trained for years. Heart rate down. Muscles relaxed. Focus narrowed to a single point. The sector sniper adjusted position. Day one squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. 800 meters away, the sector sniper jerked backward and disappeared from view. None of the coalition soldiers noticed. They were too busy trying to survive. Chrysalis is pinned down. Someone screamed over the comm. She's got wounded with her in Crater 7. Day one swung his scope to the crater. The Lumen medic huddled behind the rim with 2 injured Chithrax warriors. Plasma bolts rained down around them from a sector-heavy weapon position in a cave mouth. Day one traced the trajectory of the fire, found the cave, and waited. The heavy weapon operator shifted slightly, exposing his position for just a moment. Day one fired. The operator dropped, and the heavy weapon fell silent. The west gun stopped. Someone yelled. What happened? Day one was already moving his aim. Another sector position, this one hidden in a crevice halfway up the valley wall. They were firing down on Sergeant Threx's squad. He could see 3 enemy soldiers, but only one had a clear shot. He took it. The sector fell. His companions pulled back into the crevice, confused about where the shot had come from. Commander Voss huddled behind a rock formation, his tactical display flickering uselessly. The sector jamming had killed most of their electronic systems. He keyed his comm. Vortex actual to all units. Can anyone confirm air support? Negative, sir. All air assets are engaged on the Eastern Front. Backup? Not for 40 minutes, sir. Commander Voss snarled in frustration. They were on their own. He peered around the rock and immediately pulled back as plasma fire scorched the air where his head had been. A sector command unit was coordinating the ambush from a reinforced bunker. Their communications officer calling in more troops thought the communications officer's head snapped back. He crumpled, and the coordinated fire from the sector positions faltered for a moment. What was that? Commander Voss whispered that another sector dropped, this one attempting to flank from the north. Then another. Someone was taking precise shots from an impossible distance, hitting targets the rest of the team couldn't even see. Sergeant Threx screamed into his comm. Who is taking those shots? Vortex 6, do you have air support we don't know about? Commander Voss checked his tactical display again. No air support. No artillery. No long-range units, except. He zoomed his optical visor toward the rear position. Through the dust and smoke, he saw a figure lying prone on a rocky outcrop. The muzzle flash of a rifle. A human rifle. Impossible, he breathed. But the shots kept coming. A sector spotter died trying to call in artillery. A squad leader fell while rallying his troops. One by one, the ambush was being dismantled by someone they couldn't see, couldn't track, couldn't even believe existed. In the crater, Chrysalis risked a glance over the rim. The fire had lessened. She grabbed one of the wounded Chithrax and dragged him deeper into cover. Blessed be the spirits, she whispered, her crystalline body pulsing with fear and gratitude. Someone is watching over us. Day one paid no attention to the cum chatter. He was in the zone now, that perfect state where training and instinct merged. Wind speed, check. Distance, calculated. Target movement, tracked. Trigger squeeze, smooth dot fire. Move, acquire. Fire. A sector emerged from the main bunker, larger than the others. Command cast, probably the leader. He carried a heavy weapon and was shouting orders. Day 1 put the crosshairs center mass and fired. The sector commander staggered but didn't fall. His armor had taken the hit. He turned, scanning for the shooter, raising his weapon. Day 1 fired again. This time, the round found the gap between helmet and chestplate. The commander dropped, and chaos spread through the sector ranks. Day 1's world narrowed to the view through his scope. Everything else disappeared. The fear, the noise, the doubt. There was only the target, the wind, and the trigger. He had 17 magazines loaded, each with 10 rounds. He was on his 4th magazine now, and every shot counted. The sector were realizing they were being hunted, but they couldn't find him. Their sensors were jammed by their own technology, and his position was too far for visual confirmation. A group of sector tried to set up a mortar position behind a rock formation. Day 1 spotted the movement, calculated the distance at 2,000 meters, and adjusted for the thermal distortion rising from the heated rocks. He fired 3 times in quick succession. 3 sector fell, and the mortar lay abandoned. Vortex Actual, someone is providing overwatch, a Chithrax warrior reported, his voice filled with confusion. I count at least 15 enemy kills from an unknown position. Commander Voss knew the position now. He watched through a visor as Day 1 worked. The human barely moved, just small adjustments of his rifle, controlled breathing, and then the shot. It looked effortless, but Voss knew better. Those shots were crossing distances that even his best lumen sharpshooters would struggle with using advanced optics. It's the human, Voss said quietly. What? Sergeant Threx bellowed. That's impossible. Humans don't have the biology for. A sector, who had been crawling toward Threx's position, suddenly went limp. Threx stared at the body, then slowly turned his gaze toward the distant rocks where Day 1 was positioned. By the ancestors, Threx whispered Dot in the crater. Crystallis managed to stabilize the wounded Chithrax warriors. The plasma fire had decreased significantly, giving her time to work. She sent out a pulse of gratitude through her crystalline body, a lumen tradition for thanking unknown protectors. Somewhere out there, someone was saving their lives. Day 1 saw a flicker of movement in a tower window. A sector sniper was repositioning, trying to get an angle on Commander Voss. The distance was extreme, almost 2,400 meters. The thermal shimmer from the battlefield created ripples in the air that would throw off any computer targeting system. But Day 1 didn't use computers. He used his training, his experience, his instinct. He watched the heat shimmer, timed the pattern, and found the moment of clarity. He adjusted his aim slightly up and to the left, compensating for wind that wouldn't reach the bullet until it was halfway to target. He fired. The sector sniper had been leaning out of the window, lining up his shot. Day 1's round took him in the chest, and he tumbled from the tower. Commander Voss saw it happen. He had been tracking the enemy sniper, preparing to warn his team when the threat simply vanished. That was a 2,400-meter shot, he said to himself. Through thermal distortion, without computer assistance. Commander, a voice crackled over the comm. The sector are falling back. They're retreating to the main fortification. Voss checked his tactical overview. It was true. The ambush was collapsing. Without their leaders, without their heavy weapons, without their advantage, the sector were abandoning the valley. Strike Team Vortex was winning, and they had lost only 3 soldiers to injuries. It should have been a massacre. Instead, it was a victory. All units advanced to secure positions. Crystallis, get those wounded back to the rally point. Everyone else, move up. The team pushed forward, claiming the positions the sector had abandoned. They found bodies everywhere, each killed by a single precise shot. Sergeant Threx knelt beside one, examining the wound. Center mass. Perfect placement. One shot, one kill. A young Borvac soldier named Grun stared at the carnage. Who did this? Who killed all of them? The human, Threx said, and there was something like awe in his voice. The one watched the team advance through his scope. He counted enemy bodies, confirmed no movement, checked the fortification for any new threats. His job wasn't done. The mission was still active, and then he saw it. On the ridge above the fortification, a massive shape was being wheeled into position. Artillery, heavy plasma cannon, the kind that could destroy tanks and bunkers. It was turning, slowly, tracking toward the east, where two other coalition squads were approaching, unaware of the danger. Day 1 checked his rangefinder. 3,000 meters. The weapon was surrounded by crew members, protected by energy shields, and the heat from its charging sequence was creating massive thermal distortion. It was, by every measure, an impossible shot. He keyed his come. Vortex actual, artillery position, grid 4-7-9-3. Request permission to engage. There was a long pause. Then Commander Voss's voice, careful and uncertain. Negative, Vortex 6. That's a 3-kilometer shot through active combat zone thermals. Even our Lumen sharpshooters can't make that kind of shot. We'll call in an airstrike. Air support is 40 minutes out, sir. That cannon fires in 2 minutes. Corporal, the shot is impossible. With respect, sir, I can make it. Sergeant Threx cut into the channel. Human, you've been lucky today. That target is... The artillery cannon fired. A massive bolt of plasma streaked toward the eastern approach, where coalition soldiers had no idea death was coming. The bolt impacted a rock formation, vaporizing it and sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Day 1 didn't wait for permission. The artillery crew was reloading, moving with practiced efficiency. The gunner was exposed for seconds at a time, just small windows of opportunity. The thermal distortion was intense, the distance was extreme, and one mistake would mean dozens of coalition deaths. He steadied his breathing. His heart rate was already low, trained to stay calm under pressure. He watched the heat shimmer, found the pattern, predicted the next clear moment. His finger rested on the trigger, waiting. The gunner leaned over the weapon to adjust the targeting. The thermal distortion cleared for half a second. Day 1 fired. The world seemed to hold its breath. 3,000 meters. The bullet flew through space, through air currents and heat ripples, carrying with it every hour of training Day 1 had endured. 4 seconds of flight time. 4 seconds where dozens of lives hung in balance. The gunner jerked backward, stumbling over the cannon's controls. His hand slammed down on the firing mechanism as he fell. The weapon fired, but the barrel was pointing up instead of forward. The plasma charge detonated inside the cannon, and the entire artillery position disappeared in a massive explosion. The cum channel was silent. Absolutely silent. Every soldier in Strike Team Vortex had watched the artillery explode, had calculated the impossible distance, had realized what just happened. Finally, Chrysalis spoke, her voice resonating with wonder. By the 7 stars, who is this human? Commander Voss stared at the burning artillery position on the ridge. The explosion had cleared the morning haze, and smoke rose in a dark column against the orange sky. Around him, Strike Team Vortex waited for orders. But every soldier was looking toward the rear, toward the distant rocks where a single human had just changed the course of the battle. All units, Voss said slowly, his voice heavy with something that might have been respect, converge on the fortification. Vortex 6, you have free rein. Paint targets as you see them. Copy that, sir, Day 1 replied. His voice was calm, professional, like he hadn't just made the most impossible shot any of them had ever witnessed. The assault on the fortification began. The Borvac soldiers charged forward, their heavy armor absorbing enemy fire. The Chithrax warriors flanked from multiple directions, using their speed to confuse the defenders. But now, everything was different. Now they had a guardian angel. A sector appeared in a window, raising an anti-armor weapon toward the advancing Borvac. He fell before he could fire. A group of defenders tried to set up a defensive line at the main gate. One by one, they dropped. A commander emerged onto the fortification wall to rally his troops. He managed 3 words before Day One's bullet found him. The alien soldiers began to understand. Anywhere they looked, any threat they couldn't handle, the human would handle it for them. They started to fight differently, with confidence they had never felt before. They took risks, knowing that if danger appeared, it would be eliminated. Young Grun, the Borvac soldier, charged through a doorway and found himself face to face with 2 sector warriors. They raised their weapons. Grun raised his shield. But before anyone could fire, both sector fell, shot from behind through a window that nobody else had seen. Grun looked up at the distant rocks and raised his massive fist in salute. "Thank you, human." Day One didn't respond. He was already scanning for the next threat. His rifle was hot from sustained fire, and he was on his 10th magazine. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cool air. His shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil. But his hands were steady, and his vision was clear. Through his scope, he watched the battle unfold like a chess game. He saw patterns the others missed. He identified weak points in the sector defense. When the Chithrax warriors got pinned down by crossfire, Day One eliminated the gunners creating the crossfire. When the Borvac needed to breach a reinforced door, Day One took out the defenders waiting on the other side. He wasn't just providing covering fire. He was shaping the entire battle. "Vortex actual, main hall is clear," Sergeant Threx reported. The Borvac's voice had changed. The mockery was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like admiration. "Secure the area." Crystallis set up medical station in the main hall. All units sweep and clear remaining rooms. The fortification fell room by room, corridor by corridor. What should have taken hours took 40 minutes. What should have cost dozens of lives cost 3 injuries and 0 deaths. And every soldier in Strike Team Vortex knew why. When the fortification was secure, Commander Voss ordered the team to regroup. They gathered in the main hall, tired but alive, victorious against odds that should have crushed them. Voss checked his tactical display, counting casualties, confirming enemy kills. The numbers were staggering. "Vortex 6, return to base position," Voss ordered. "On my way, sir." It took Day One 20 minutes to make the journey from his sniper position to the fortification. When he finally walked through the main gate, the entire team was waiting. They stood in silence, alien soldiers from a dozen different species, all watching the small human approach. Day One looked tired. His uniform was dusty, and his rifle hung from its strap across his back. He looked completely normal, unremarkable. But the aliens saw him differently now. They saw the 17 empty magazines attached to his belt. They saw the calm in his eyes. They saw a warrior who had just saved all their lives. Sergeant Threx stepped forward. The massive Borvac towered over Day One, his shadow blocking the sun. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Threx extended his huge clawed hand. "I was wrong, human. You fight with honor." He paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily. "What is your name?" "Corporal Day One, Sergeant." "No." Threx shook his head. "Today, you earned a new name. Today, you are Corporal Day One, Ghost of Talus 7, because you see what others cannot see. You strike where others cannot strike. You save lives that others cannot save." One by one, the other soldiers approached. Crystallis touched Day One's shoulder with her crystalline hand, a gesture of deep respect among lumens. The Chithrax warriors performed a clicking salute, reserved for worthy enemies and honored allies. Even the soldiers who had laughed at him yesterday now treated him with reverence. Grun, the young Borvak, knelt down to meet Day One at eye level. "You saved my life, Ghost. I am in your debt." "Just doing my job," Day One said quietly. "Your job?" Thrax laughed, but it was warm now, not mocking. "Your job is to guard the rear. You just killed 43 enemies and destroyed an artillery position from 3 kilometers away. That is not a job. That is art." Commander Voss approached last. He studied Day One for a long moment, his yellow eyes thoughtful. "Corporal, I owe you an apology. I judged you by your species, not your skill. That was foolish. No apology needed, sir. You didn't know what I could do, but you knew." Voss's tail swished slowly. "You tried to tell us, and we didn't listen. That won't happen again." He pulled up his tactical pad. "I'm filing a commendation report to Coalition High Command. They need to know what happened here today. They need to know what humans can do." That evening, the team made camp in the secured fortification. They ate rations and swapped stories, and for the first time, they included Day One in the conversation. Thrax told tales of battles on ice worlds. Crystallis sang a Lumen song about fallen warriors. And they asked Day One questions, genuine questions about Earth and human military training. "How do you make those shots without computer assistance?" Grun asked. Day One shrugged. "Practice. Lots of practice. On Earth, we can't rely on technology for everything. We have to trust our training, our instincts. We learn to read wind, calculate distance, control our breathing and heartbeat. It's not special. It's just human. Just human." Thrax repeated slowly. "I think humans are more special than we realized." Later, alone in his temporary quarters, Day One cleaned his rifle and checked his equipment. Tomorrow they would return to base, and new missions would follow. But tonight something had changed. The ridicule had stopped. The doubt had ended. They saw him now, really saw him, and they respected what they saw. He pulled out the photograph of his sister and smiled. "I told you they'd see, G1, he whispered. 1 week after the battle at Talos 7, Day One stood in the base command center wearing a clean uniform. Around him, the senior officers of Strike Team Vortex had gathered, along with holographic projections of Coalition High Council members. The council chamber appeared before them, floating in blue light, showing alien leaders from across the galaxy. Commander Voss stood at attention. "Council members, my report on the Talos 7 operation is complete. I've submitted all tactical data, combat recordings, and casualty figures." "We have reviewed your report, Commander," said Council Member Ratha, a Lumen Elder whose crystalline form glowed with authority. "The numbers are impressive. 43 confirmed enemy kills from a single soldier. 0 friendly casualties. An artillery position destroyed at 3,000 meters. These figures seem impossible. They seemed impossible to me as well, Council Member, until I witnessed them myself." A Borvik counselor, massive even in holographic form, leaned forward. "You claim a human soldier achieved this. Humans are the weakest species in the Coalition by every measurable standard. Strength, speed, sensory capability, technological integration. How do you explain this?" Commander Voss gestured to Day One. "Perhaps the human should explain himself." Day One stepped forward, acutely aware that he was addressing leaders who commanded billions of soldiers across hundreds of worlds. His hands wanted to shake, but he kept them still. This was just another kind of shot, another kind of target. "Stay calm. Stay focused. Council members," he began, his voice steady. "There's nothing unusual about what I did. Any trained human marksman could achieve similar results given the same circumstances. Impossible, the Borvik counselor rumbled. Your species lacks enhanced vision. You cannot see the thermal spectrum, the ultraviolet range, or the infrared signatures that guide our weapons. How can you claim any human could replicate your performance? Day One chose his words carefully. You're right, sir. We can't see in multiple spectrums. We don't have natural armor or enhanced strength. Our reaction times are slower than most species. But that's exactly why we developed the skills I used. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth, rotating slowly in the center of the room. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us. Predators that were faster. Weather that was deadlier. Diseases that were invisible. We survived not because we were the strongest, but because we adapted. We learned to make tools. We learned to plan. We learned to overcome our limitations through training and determination. Ratha's crystalline form pulsed with interest. Continue. For military operations, we train on a simple principle. Technology fails. Sensors get jammed like they did at Talos 7. Computers glitch. Equipment breaks. So we don't rely on them. We train our fundamentals until they become instinct. Breathing control. Trigger discipline. Range estimation. Wind reading. We practice until we can make impossible shots, because we can't trust impossible technology. Day One brought up footage from the battle, showing his position and the targets he had engaged. Every shot I took followed the same process. Observe the target without electronic assistance. Calculate distance using reference points and experience. Measure wind speed by watching grass, dust, and heat shimmer. Adjust for gravity, temperature, and atmospheric pressure. Control my heartbeat and breathing. Then squeeze the trigger smoothly. This is standard human military training? Asked a Kintari counselor, her multiple eyes blinking in sequence. Yes, ma'am. Every sniper in Earth's military learns these skills. Some are better than others, but we all learn the same fundamentals. We have to, because we know our equipment might fail when we need it most. Sergeant Threx, standing at the back of the room, spoke up. Council members, if I may. I fought beside Corporal Day One. I watched him work. He didn't make those shots because of luck or enhancement. He made them because while we waited for our sensors to work, he used his eyes. While we waited for computer solutions, he used his training. The human factor isn't superior biology. It's superior determination. Determination, Ratha repeated slowly. An interesting word. We'd call it stubbornness on Earth, Day One said with a small smile. We're not the fastest or strongest species, but we refuse to quit. We've been refusing to quit since we learned to walk upright. That's what makes us human. The council members conferred among themselves in various languages and clicking sounds. Finally, Ratha spoke for all of them. The council has reached a decision. Earth's military contribution to the coalition will be expanded immediately. We request 500 marksmen of Day One's caliber for deployment across active war zones. Day One felt his breath catch. 500. Earth had maybe 2,000 trained snipers in total. This would be half their long-range capability. Additionally, Ratha continued, we are ordering a study of human training protocols for possible integration into coalition military doctrine. Commander Vuss, you will oversee this project. You will teach our soldiers what the humans have learned. Yes, council member. Corporal Day One, you are hereby promoted to sergeant and assigned as primary instructor for human integration training. You will report to Coalition Military Academy within the month. Yes, council member. Thank you. The holographic council chamber flickered and disappeared. The command center fell silent. Then Sergeant Threx started clapping, a slow, heavy sound like stones striking together. The others joined in, creating a cacophony of alien applause that echoed off the walls. Commander, Voss approached Day One and extended his clawed hand. Congratulations, Sergeant. You've changed the galaxy's opinion of your species in a single battle. That's quite an accomplishment. I just did what I was trained to do, sir. Exactly. And now others will learn from your training. That evening, Strike Team Vortex gathered in the mess hall for what they called a warrior feast. It was a Barvac tradition, celebrating victories and honoring brave soldiers. They had prepared food from a dozen different worlds, creating a table that looked more like a chemistry experiment than a meal. Chrysalis approached, Day One carrying something small in her crystalline hands. This is for you, she said softly. It was a shard of crystal, glowing with soft blue light. Day One recognized it immediately. Lumens grew these shards from their own bodies, and giving one was the highest honor they could bestow. I can't accept this, Day One said. This is part of you. You saved my life and the lives of my patients. In Lumen culture, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. Please, accept this as a symbol of eternal friendship. Day One took the shard carefully. It was warm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Thank you, Chrysalis. I'll treasure it. Grun raised a massive cup filled with some kind of Borvik drink that smelled like battery acid. A toast. To Day One, Ghost of Talus 7. To the human who taught us that strength comes in many forms. To Day One. The others echoed, raising their own cups. The celebration continued for hours. They told stories, sang songs, and laughed together like soldiers who had faced death and survived. The barriers between species seemed to dissolve. They were no longer Borvik, Lumen, Chithrax, and human. They were warriors. They were brothers and sisters in arms. Later, alone in his quarters, Day One composed a message to his sister. The words came slowly, but they felt right. G1, they finally see us. Not as weak, not as inferior, but as equals. We didn't change who we are. We just showed them what humans have always been. Survivors who become warriors when we must. The galaxy ridiculed us. Now they respect us. 500 of our best are coming to join the fight. Earth is no longer a joke in the coalition. We're proof that determination and skill can overcome any limitation. Stay safe out there. Your brother, Day One. He sent the message and walked to the window. Outside, a transport ship was landing, its engines glowing bright against the dark sky. The first wave of human reinforcements was arriving. Day One recognized some of the soldiers as they disembarked. Taemin from Seoul, who could hit targets at 4,000 meters. Hyen Wu from Bazan, who had won every marksmanship competition for 3 years running. Mi Sun from Incheon, who was faster than anyone Day One had ever seen. They were coming. Earth's finest warriors, ready to prove what one human had already shown. The ridicule had ended. The reputation had begun. And it had started with one sniper who refused to accept the galaxy's low expectations. Day One smiled and returned to his rifle. Tomorrow there would be new missions, new battles, new challenges. But tonight he allowed himself to feel proud. Proud of what he had accomplished. Proud of his species. Proud to be human. The galaxy was learning what Earth had always known. Humans might not be the strongest or the fastest. But when they set their minds to something, when they trained with dedication and fought with determination, they were unstoppable, one shot at a time.